So Scroll Patrol number 39, shindoku, or solitary refinement. I didn't do a character analysis, but shin is a tsutsushimu, which sort of means like it comes up a lot in historical texts. It basically means like a true heart. The heart is, and then true. It's like constant cultivation of your character, refining your character. It's like constant action. And doku is just means like solitary or alone. So let's get stuck into it. During the recent renovation of the Kinsai tea room at the home of the Ueda Soko Ryu in Hiroshima, an inscription was rediscovered on the reverse side of the calligraphic plaque bearing the tea room's name. The characters Kinsai were written in 1816 by Asano Hakukyo at the request of Ueda Yasutsugu, the 10th head of the Ueda family. When the calligraphy was mounted as a plaque, Yasutsugu commissioned the Confucian scholar Yamaguchi Saien to compose an explanation of its meaning, which was then affixed to the back of the plaque. Here's my English translation of that text. The two characters, keishin, meaning reverence and restraint, appear in the classic of poetry, the shijin, in the major court hymns under the section titled Reflection. This poem was composed in ancient times by the Duke Wu of Wei, who, even at the age of 95, wrote it as a moral admonition to himself. In it we read, Keishin igi kore tami no nori. Reverence and restraint in one's bearing becomes a model for the people. Reverence and restraint in one's bearing becomes a model for the people. That is, one who governs must cultivate virtue within and refine his conduct outwardly. When this is done, all the people, whether gifted or not, will naturally take such a person as their standard. My lord occupies a high position in the province, a station to which the people look up to with respect. If he does not maintain reverence and restraint in virtue and conduct, the people of the realm will neither be moved nor inspired, nor will there be anything worthy to leave to future generations. On this occasion, rather than giving this name to a formal hall befitting ceremony, my lord has chosen this name instead for a private, quiet chamber. Surely this carries deliberate meaning. For when people grow careless in their conduct, it is rarely in public view, but most often in hidden and shadowed places. Thus, the essence of self-cultivation for a gentleman lies in shindoku, solitary refinement, or guarding one's conduct when alone. How could one not admire the depth of my lord's intention? I'll spare you the voice now. Reading this text in 2026, in light of what has been revealed about many once regarded noble leaders in the Epstein files, I find myself trying to untangle an internal conundrum. How do we live ethically when authority so often flows from money, connections, or celebrity, rather than earned by character? How do we maintain integrity when those who lead us do not? Shindoku reminds us that real authority is proven in private, not performed in public. The private room, not the public hall, is the true testing ground. Leadership radiates outward through example. And when that discipline collapses, as the text plainly says, the people are left with nothing to trust, follow, let alone admire. Our present crisis is not simply bad leadership. I believe the real problem is inverted ethics, which is to say, public virtue is performed and managed, while the same people are doing heinous shit in private circles. The result is a corrosive double standard: law for the governed, indulgence for the powerful, which naturally raises a very dangerous question: why obey at all? So, why do you? It's not like this is the first time. In 1887, the British historian Lord Acton was writing to Bishop Mandell Creighton, who argued that historians should judge popes, kings, and great rulers more generously than ordinary people because of the burdens of their office. Acton rejected this completely. He insisted that the more power a person holds, the more strictly they must be judged, not less, especially because power so often escapes legal consequence in its own time. Lord Acton warned, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men." And he continues. So, what to do? Refusing authority risks dissolving the fabric that allows shared life to function. This is why the Epstein files are so destructive. They bring into very sharp focus ground-shaking notions of why we should respect authority and observe the rules of law at all. My current answer to these questions is that they don't matter in the first place. The state is not the first guarantor of order. You and I are. Society holds together because ordinary people continue choosing fairness, restraint, and honesty in small, unseen moments. What's more, we aspire to take our private practice to the streets. A tea person is both a tea person inside and outside the tea room. When leaders fail, responsibility shifts downward and outward to communities, interpersonal relationships, and daily conduct. The Latin origin of society is societatem, meaning fellowship, association, alliance, union, community. Society is goodness practiced beyond the reach of power. But in your head and mine, I hear, but that's not fair. Yep, it is not. Power often escapes consequence. That's why it's called power. The etymology of which is to be able, pouvoir, and by extension, to be able to without consequence. History has never guaranteed fairness. Fairness survives because we choose to practice it anyway, in how we treat one another, in what we refuse to excuse, and in the standards we hold ourselves when no one is watching. One response to the divide between society and governance is minimal necessary participation, i.e., to interact with government only when necessary and concentrate one's energy in relationships, communities, and practices that honour human dignity. Stepping back from systems we distrust can protect something essential. Our hearts are less shaped by institutions we refuse to emotionally invest in. After my time working inside government, I found myself returning to a simple personal rule. I meet institutions where I must, but I don't let them decide who I am. But governments do not disappear when good people step away. Vacuums are often filled by those more comfortable with corruption and less troubled by compromise. And when the conscientious withdraw entirely, what remains becomes colder, harsher, and more indifferent to human cost. One of my heroes, Hannah Arendt, warned of this danger. The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. The real danger is not evil acting openly, but systems that function perfectly well as long as enough people are willing to look away. We see this tension everywhere at the moment, but people still believe change comes from choosing between red and blue, left and right. Call me crazy, but if you mix red and blue, you get purple, the colour reserved for the robes of awakened monks, allegedly. From a higher perspective, opposing sides begin to look like parts of the same system. Elections can start to feel less like turning points and more like movement within structures that rarely allow for truly independent voices to rise. So the deeper question stops being just who to vote for, but how to live with integrity when politics alone cannot carry our hopes for a healthy society. Sometimes I feel as if history is a long struggle for the human mind. The shaping of what we accept as normal, inevitable, or permissible. History not only of war, of armies or economies, but the constant attack on our attention, desires, fears, and imagination. If that's true, then tea and Zen take a very unusual position. They don't enter this struggle on its own terms. They refuse to let worldly forces define the terrain of the heart. They refuse to let worldly forces define the terrain of the heart. Dynasties change, courts fall, networks of influence form and collapse. Still, beneath these cycles, practice lineages like tea and Zen endure, not because they expect fairness from power, but because they preserve the conditions in which fairness between human beings continues to exist. Our tea and Zen practice begins somewhere smaller and more demanding, refusing to let corruption determine one's own conduct. The discipline is simple, but it's very hard. Do not let injustice make you careless with your integrity. Don't let injustice make you careless with your integrity. The tea room is not an escape from the world's failures. It's an outright refusal to reproduce them. Though tea and Zen have institutional and governance structures, they are first and foremost fertile eruptions of culture. Culture outlasts power. The Ueda Soko's tea has survived 260 years of the Tokugawa shogunate, the Meiji Restoration, where the samurai were stripped of power and land, and even the fucking atomic bomb. Today, Soko's tea lives across continents because it transmits ways of cultivating human character, not power. As we can see very well from the inside, history is not only the story of who ruled, but of who kept the human heart from hardening. And so the practice continues. Protect attention. Guard your conduct. Meet others fully and pass forward ways of being human that corruption cannot reach.